Differential association is the idea that individuals learn deviant or criminal behavior from others and through interaction with them. Because of this, people who are generally tend to hang around people who are engaged in deviant or criminal behaviors tend to wind up mimicking these deviant or criminal behaviors themselves. This theory was very different from many other criminological theories of the past, because rather than looking at crime as something that's biological or a physical trait of someone or something that's inherited, it looks at crime as something that is learned.
Here are the 9 core propositions of differential association. While many of them are self-explanatory, I want to specifically elaborate on 4, 6, 8, and 9. Number 4 teaches people how they commit the crime, so the actual means they would do to go about committing the crime, why they would commit the crime, so justifications and reasons why, and what the purpose of the crime is, so for example, how it would benefit them. Number 6 is the core proposition of differential association. It basically states that when someone is repeatedly told why they should violate a law, rather than why that law is important and why they should follow it, they're more likely to commit a crime. For Proposition 8, I want to highlight the fact that because they're taught the same way, criminals and non-criminals aren't inherently different. Finally, for Proposition 9, while some people, for example, may steal to meet their basic needs, not all people who are unable to meet their basic needs steal. Therefore, there must be something else that explains why people steal, and this is not developed in isolation.
A clear example of this is skipping school. If you think about it, people aren't born knowing how to skip school. They learn this behavior from someone else. Even if someone were to be in complete isolation, the idea of skipping school wouldn't come from them, and they would have learned it from some other source. Additionally, people learn to skip school from people they know closely. Someone isn't going to skip school because a stranger they met on the street that day told them to. People are also taught how to skip school. You can't just walk out the door and leave. There are things in place to prevent that from happening. People learn the techniques to skip school from other people, whether that be through forging notes or things of that nature. People skip school because they're repeatedly told the benefits of it from their peers or people they know, and generally not told the negatives of doing so. People who are repeatedly told the negatives of skipping school and how it will harm them generally aren't the ones doing it in the first place. Finally, people generally skip school with their friends who they know at school. These are people who they've known for a long time and are very important in close relationships to them. Finally, people who do and don't skip school aren't inherently different. Next up is social learning theory. The core tenet of social learning theory is the idea that behavior is strengthened or repressed based on the feedback one receives for it.
Social learning theory has its roots in behavioral psychology, specifically operant conditioning. On screen now is a quick explanation of operant conditioning.
Imitation/modeling is one of the core parts of social learning theory. Behavior can be reinforced by individuals or groups who act as models for that behavior. If someone sees a behavior who someone is imitating get benefits for doing so, they'll become more likely to want to imitate the behavior. The same thing is true for the opposite. Next up is differential reinforcement, which is the process by which deviant behavior becomes dominant over a conforming behavior in certain scenarios. For example, skipping school can become the dominant behavior in some social groups, and in those groups, not skipping school can be seen as lame, which can
On screen now are the 7 propositions of social learning theory. Many of them are derived from differential association, or many of the things I have already discussed about, so I won't be going into detail on them. However, I will be going into detail on numbers 4 and 7. People need to learn the skills and attitudes of committing crime as well as how to avoid being caught, which are acquired by hanging around people who engage in this deviant behavior. Finally, Proposition 7 is directly derived from operant conditioning, as the more a behavior is reinforced, the more frequently it will be repeated.
While these are the 7 main propositions of social learning theory, differential association, definitions, differential reinforcement, and modeling/imitations are usually the things that are studied to examine social learning theory because they're both testable and can be empirically supported. Pratt et al.'s 2010 meta-analysis was done with the goal of accumulating a more systematic sample of studies organized around the 4 main components of social learning theory. The meta-analysis found that the mean effect sizes of social learning theory are comparable or larger than that of other leading criminological theories. The meta-analysis also found that differential association and definitions are the 2 most commonly studied predictors of social learning theory, while modeling/imitation and differential reinforcements are not studied as much. The 2 that have been tested more very strongly correlate and are predictors of social learning theory, while the two that haven't are often weakly correlated or sometimes even statistically insignificant. It is possible that rather than this being due to a statistical insignificance, it is rather the fact that being associated with deviant people provides one with more opportunities and a greater closeness to opportunities to commit deviant acts.